Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Bo, failure is such a big part of life. If you don't fail, you don't learn. If you don't learn, you don't change. And life is about changing, getting better. But so many people have a negative connotation with the word failure. But you say failure is fantastic. You have a positive spin on it.
Dave, without question. And I don't know at what point along the way that in general society came to accept or to associate failure with negative feelings or emotions, or that universally failure is a bad thing. Maybe it has to do with the response that we got when we failed a test that we brought home to our parents and we got punished for it, or perhaps in a talent show, something happened and we tripped and the whole school laughed at us and we felt discouraged and completely embarrassed, and we vowed never to do that one thing again that was the result of our original failure. Whereas in reality, grand scheme of things, failure is fantastic. And in order to illustrate this point or to prove my conviction, I'd like to share the story of Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first man ever to summit Mount Everest. Now, what we now know as the successful apex occurring in 1953 actually began in Sir Edmund's first attempt in 1951. Now, he first had a goal, which was fueled by belief, as you and I have been talking about these last several weeks. Start with a commitment, which is I am going to climb Mount Everest, followed by discipline, which was the actual action, the training, the preparation, the heartache, the planning of the actual expedition, which would be the discipline. And on the other side, enthusiasm, which is that sheer energy that he fueled himself with in order to make that trip successful. Whereas in reality, in 1951, he tried, and guess what? He failed. So we never heard about that. The world as we know was actually privileged to hear the story of Sir Edmund Hillary successfully apexing Mount Everest in 1953, but there's a backstory there that we just didn't know. So in 1951, his first attempt, it ended in failure. And by the way, we're talking about Mount Everest, a mountain of 29,000 feet and some change. So no one even thought it was possible, much less practical. Yet he faced his original investors that funded his first attempt in London immediately following his failure. And you know what he said? He said, Mount Everest, I will defeat you because you cannot get any bigger, but I can. Let me say that again, because this speaks right to the heart of the matter of our topic today, which is failure. He says, Mount Everest, you cannot get any bigger, but I can. And so rather than harboring on the failure that he experienced in 1951, he learned, he prepared, he allowed that to drive his determination and enthusiasm for what then became the successful summit, May 29th, which we're dealing with 2 days now, 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary successfully summited Mount Everest at 11:30 in the morning, and the conquest was actually announced on the eve of Elizabeth II coronation. So that was pretty cool because Sir Edmund Hillary got to participate in the knighting of her new position when he returned to Britain. How about that for a story on failure?
That's a great one. It's like falling down 7 times, getting up the 8th time. You just don't give up. If you see that peak, say, hey, you knocked me down, but I'm still coming after you. Stay there all you want, but I'm still coming after you.
No question. And what I took from this, and I've read a lot on this particular task, but then just being a huge fan of the concept of failure, In my own life experience of literally flirting with death due to an ongoing medical condition of mine, is that, I consider myself an authority on how to fail. Matter of fact, my book that's coming out in 2 months roughly now is simply titled The Problem with Perfect, which implies imperfection. Well, imperfection is synonymous with failure. So, Dave, here's the point. Failure is fine as long as it's not final and as long as it is fast. In other words, the longer we wallow in our failure, the more time we give our minds to spend on the actual event that led us to failure, the greater the potential for fear is to overcome us and to ultimately paralyze us from realizing the potential that we have in accomplishing whatever it is that task might be. So every single one of us, we possess doubt, we possess fear. It's what that we feed or what we give attention to that grows. So obviously, if we're thinking more about fear, we're going to completely psych ourselves out and never even attempt to repeat that which resulted in failure to begin with. Or our other choice, rather than spending time on fear, is to focus on our faith and the unknown and simply believing that it can be done. And the reason that our faith should grow in spite of our failure is that we've already tried it once. And as long as we're not stopping with our initial failure, remember, failure is fine as long as it's not final, is that we've learned something. And we're that much better off in our second attempt around. Before we connected today, you were telling me about your very impressive 24-hour mountain biking ride in which you and 4 teammates literally began a race at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday and ended the race at 12 o'clock noon on Sunday. And all 5 of you were called to participate in completing 15-mile loops. Well, Dave, you shared with me that one of your particular loops began at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you had a pretty bad crash. And you may have a little bit of road rash on your chin right now. But you know what? I say that's a sign of going after your life. You're living life actively, and you learned from the multiple times you had ridden that course, as you shared with me before, because in all practical purposes, you and I could be having this talk right now with you missing your lower teeth, because it could have been that bad. But you were familiar with the course because you had been there before. So you faced your fear, your failure head on, and you were able to successfully.
It's experience is that great teacher, and without practicing, failing or falling down, there's no way to learn how to do it. I don't know how many people can attempt something on the first try and succeed. There's really no lessons learned in that aspect unless you do fail, because next time you come around, you'll attack it in a different manner. So for me, attacking the descent in which I crashed, I knew how to approach it in a more successful, efficient way the second time around. So to me, it was sure, I had a fall, I have some road rash, but I felt more confident the second time around because of that initial failure.
Absolutely. You are a living, breathing example of our topic for conversation today. So let's revisit some of the side effects that failure can potentially cause. And these would be side effects that we would characterize as less than ideal. And so those could be feelings of unworthiness, feelings of inadequacy, perhaps shame. Well, the negative effect of these side effects per se is that they can potentially override our deepest desires for the purpose that we were truly created for. And because our deepest desires are overridden, it could truly justify a response that we reduce, gosh, or even eliminate our vision of what it is we truly long for in our life. Because here's the thing, Dave, we were all born with desire that is natural. And the way in which we pursue that desire And the early results that we experience in life could make the difference between living out our truest potential or being paralyzed out of our initial feedback as we attempt to close that gap, because none of us were born with the ability that we now have at this stage of our life. And when we were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, we were just a smaller version of what we are today. And here's the thing: with any new pursuit, we have this ratio of desire and talent. And whenever we begin things new, our desire is always going to outweigh our talent. But as we move closer and closer to the end result that we so desire, our talent is going to grow. But it's important that we never lose that fascination with the unknown, because the more time we feed our fear, because most of us, we fear the unknown. We fear that which is not familiar. That's why we create comfort zones for ourselves. Okay, it's a routine that allows us to efficiently navigate this increasingly hectic life that we live. But character growth never occurs within the friendly confines of our comfort zones. And as you and I have discussed before, we as human beings will never do anything different. In other words, we will never experience failure because we've completely eliminated it, because we have these safe, comfy lives that don't cause us any pain or pushback. But we're never going to leave our comfort zones until our pain of same exceeds our pain of change. And unfortunately, or as you and I would advocate for, fortunately, when we attempt to change, failure is on the near horizon. And it's only a matter of time before it arrives. So we can embrace it, we can learn from it, we can grow from it, or we can be intimidated by it and never allow ourselves or even give ourselves the chance to live out our deepest desires.
I don't know if you're like me in this respect, but I'm almost drawn to people who have had those challenges or failures in life, whether it's in athletics or in the professional arena, because I find these people have the greatest lessons to teach me because they've been down that road before. I do need to have these personal failures so I can build my own confidence and experience, but I want that guy who maybe got fired from his job 3 times, or he had to relocate, or maybe the athlete who was on a losing team, and the following year he turned it all the way around 180 and they had a successful year. But those are the people I want to learn from because they've been down the road that I still need to go down, but they can bring some perspective and help me prepare for the possibilities because they've seen both sides.
No question. And that's a wonderful perspective. And it's the age old attraction of the underdog. We all want to root for the underdog. And I can mention the movie Rudy, where Rudy Rudiger, who completely had no shot of making the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, trying semester after semester, not to mention having to bring his grades up, going back after he'd worked a factory job for several years. And only in the last play of the last game of his senior season did he get in the game and he actually made a tackle. He tackled the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage. Another example that I can think of is Rocky Balboa, and fighting the Russian overseas, of which he actually chose for himself to honor his fallen friend Apollo. These underdog stories, they all appeal to the human element, the opposite of what's known as a superstar phenomenon. Those who possess this talent that was naturally birthed, that is quite honestly, it doesn't translate. We can't relate to it. And so the wonderful thing, and this is another reason why I love our sport of Ironman racing, is that Ironman is all about ordinary people doing extraordinary things because of their willingness to embrace failure and to leverage it through the process of learning, perfecting, tweaking, growing, ultimately leading to a life of meaning. and a life on purpose. So failure is simply a catalyst for fantastic character growth. And the way that I kind of like to think about it is we can associate the term failure with making errors. Well, we've all heard that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, how about an error a day keeps the ego away? Because when we allow our ego to creep in, it becomes all about me, where on the greater scheme of things, life, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about what is going on around us. How can we help others learn based on our own failures, based on our struggles? You mentioned the fact we love these human interest pieces, associated with overcoming extreme obstacles. Well, these are people that are no different than you and I, probably a little worse off due to their physical ailments or disabilities or whatever they had been, but they made a decision. At some point along the way, life, well, it threw them limits. And not only did they make lemonade out of it, but they turned what could have been a sedentary, resigned lifestyle due to failure, and they made it fantastic. So they have not only embraced the errors that life has thrown them, they do not allow ego to creep into any aspect of their life. And that's why they're so approachable. Lance Armstrong, overcame a physical ailment to become one of the most successful tour riders ever. Now, whatever's happened beyond that, it is what it is, but it no less diminishes his overcoming a life-threatening disease. And that's just one example, thanks to our sport. But this whole concept of overcoming, it's not intuitive by nature. We have to make a decision to overcome that which is built into our human souls, that we value comfort and familiarity above most things in life. And again, it's not until we step out of the known, of the familiar, that we find our fullest potential. And on that path to living out our potential is failure.
And it's not the failure that defeats us. It's always that fear of failure that keeps people from going. And I believe that, and maybe this kind of, maybe I'm just asking this question, there is no road to success without failure, or is that too simplifying it too much?
I don't think there's such a thing as too simple.
Okay.
I think you absolutely communicate the point that if you want to get where you truly desire to go in life, failure is a necessary stop along the way. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when, and what are you going to do with it. Failure is fine as long as it's fast and as long as it's not final. Because you'll never get wherever it is you're going in life without experiencing adversity, which it's up to you to see as an advantage, a setback, which is up to you to turn into a setup, or an obstacle, again, which is up to you to create an opportunity out of. The world is waiting for each one of us to live out our truest potential, which ultimately rests in our purpose. Because once we've found our purpose, we can truly fulfill the role of servant that we are created to serve. And that just happens to be encouraging others toward reaching their fullest potential. Because simply put, encouragement is simply giving courage away. It's the greatest gift that any one of us can give to our fellow human being, and painting the picture of reality that failure is fine as long as it's not final.
This is one of my favorite topics. I really do embrace this word failure, and almost even not the lifestyle of failure, but looking forward to going out and trying something and not expecting to succeed on the first try, because I want to know how not to do it. I want to know how to avoid that speed bump next time. So if I go out and sometimes I don't want advice. I want to learn on my own, because I feel like that experience is better for me to learn on my own versus someone telling me what's going to happen. I don't, that's just my way of learning, is I need to go through those steps. I need to fall down. I need to skin my chin. I need to break something before I figure out how to do it right. And that's just probably my way of doing it. I need to go that route because I'm a better by living the example versus hearing the example.
Dave, I could not have said it any better myself. And ultimately, it creates a greater appreciation for the actual overcoming. Because if you think about pain in its truest essence, pain is an indication that you're on the right track. Because we've all heard if it were easy, everyone would do it. We don't want to be everyone. We want to be the exception to the rule. In order to be the exception, it all comes down to our perception of failure. Failure is value. It's not constructive, or sorry, it's not negative feedback. It's not something to be discouraged by. It's simply part of the process. And if we can anticipate it before it actually occurs, it makes it that much easier to deal with when we're living through it.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.